Welcome back to this next video in which we are studying headaches. Okay, so in the previous video we discussed the anatomy of the trigeminal sensory nuclei, and in this video what we're going to move on to discussing is how sensory information that is coming in from the facial region of the head is going to be conveyed up to the primary somatosensory cortexes on either side of the brain from the trigeminal sensory nuclei. After that, what we'll discuss is how sensory information from the back of the head and from the neck region is actually going to come into the central nervous system through the mixed cervical spinal nerves, and how that sensory information is going to be conveyed up to the primary somatosensory cortexes as well. After we've discussed both of those things, we will then have a complete understanding of how nociceptive information, one form of general sensory information, from the 6 muscles that we discussed, the frontalis, the temporalis, and the occipitalis muscles, how that is going to be conveyed up to the primary somatosensory cortex. And then we'll return to discussing how the triggers of tension-type headaches are believed to actually activate the nociceptors in those 6 muscles to give rise to a tension-type headache. Right, so that's the plan from here on in. So, to begin with then, what I want to discuss is how sensory information that is coming in the trigeminal nerves from the facial region, and remember the left trigeminal nerve will be bringing sensory information from the left facial region, and the right trigeminal nerve will be bringing sensory information from the right facial region, how that is going to be conveyed up to the primary somatosensory cortexes. So I suppose the first thing I should probably do is just remind you about the primary somatosensory cortexes, which I'll just do quickly here. So let's pick some nice colour, we'll have yellow. So what I'm going to draw here is a picture of the left cerebral hemisphere viewed from the left-hand side. The symmetrical image will be true on the right-hand side for the right cerebral hemisphere. So this is a picture I'm sure you'll be familiar with. So I'm just drawing the left cerebral hemisphere viewed from the left-hand side. So here we are. So, we have the temporal lobe here, the occipital lobe at the back, the parietal lobe here, and the frontal lobe at the front. And of course, peeking out from underneath, you'd have the brainstem, which I might just add on here. So, you only see the lower portions of the brainstem, so you would see the lower portion of the pons here, and the medulla, and then the spinal cord beneath it, like so. And then behind, of course, the brainstem, you'd then have the cerebellum, which I'll add in here. So this is just a picture of the brain from the left-hand side, and I'm drawing this so that we can see the left cerebral hemisphere. Right, I'm sure you've seen this picture before. So, one of the big landmark sulci on the surface of the cerebral hemispheres is the central sulcus, and this nicely shows us where the primary somatosensory cortexes are. So I'm going to add this sulcus on. So remember, a sulcus is an invagination of the cerebral cortex. This is a particularly significant one. The cerebral cortex is covered in sulci, but this is a very, very famous one that all medical students learn the name of, called the central sulcus. So this here, this is the central sulcus, and it divides the frontal lobe from the parietal lobe. So this is the frontal lobe in front of the central sulcus, and then behind here we have the parietal lobe, and then further back we have the occipital lobe. Now, right behind the central sulcus, the gyrus, which is the the name for cortex between 2 sulci. The gyrus behind the central sulcus, known as the post-central gyrus, this is where the primary somatosensory cortex is. So a few pieces of terminology here. So the gyrus behind the central sulcus, that's called the post-central gyrus. And this is where the primary somatosensory cortex is. So let me just mark this on, and then I'll write out the name. So here it is, all of this portion of cortex that I'm colouring in green, just behind the central sulcus. That is the post-central gyrus, and this is where this very important piece of cortex is, which is called the primary somatosensory cortex, often abbreviated down to S1, like so. So this is the primary somatosensory cortex, and this is going to be where all sensory information, well, general sensory information, that's important, where all general sensory information from all over the body is going to be brought up to. Now, of course, you have two of them. You have a left primary somatosensory cortex and you have a right primary somatosensory cortex. And the left primary somatosensory cortex serves the right-hand side of the body. Remember, it's contralateral. Left primary somatosensory cortex, right side of the body. Right primary somatosensory cortex, left side of the body. That's very, very important to remember. Okay, so primary somatosensory cortex. It is called primary because it's the first portion of cortex that general sensory information is going to be brought up to. And it is somatosensory because it's bringing in sensory information from all over the somatic body. Now, general sensory information comes up to this portion of cortex. It's relayed up to this portion of cortex. Remember, the general sensory modalities are fine touch, crude touch, temperature sensation, pain sensation. Obviously, pain is the one we're very interested in. Vibration sensation and proprioceptive sensation. All of these different forms of sensation from all over the body will come up to the primary somatosensory cortexes. And if we're talking about the right side of the body, it will come up to the left primary somatosensory cortex. The special sensations such as vision, smell, taste, hearing, those are not brought up to the primary somatosensory cortex. They have much more fancy portions of cortex for them. Right, so all sensory information of the general sensory modalities is going to be brought up to the contralateral primary somatosensory cortex. And really, these pathways that bring it up, all they really do is they just relay the information up to this higher portion of the central nervous system. And we're going to study the pathway that relays sensory information up from the two sides of the facial region up to the contralateral primary somatosensory cortexes. Obviously, once the sensory information has arrived up in the primary somatosensory cortex, then somehow, and the mechanism we do not understand, this leads to actual conscious sensation. So sensory information arrives up here. We understand that very, very well. We're going to study the pathways by which it arrives up here. But what we don't understand is then how, once that sensory information has arrived up here, how does it then lead to conscious sensation? I can't give you the answer to this. I don't foresee the answer to this being found in my lifetime. The human mind might not be capable of understanding what consciousness is. It's a massive problem in philosophy, in physics, in neuroscience, in religion. It's a huge problem, and we don't have a clue how consciousness works, what even it is. But somehow, once the sensory information arrives up in the primary somatosensory cortex, some amazing thing happens. This arrow happens, and it leads to conscious sensation. Right, the last thing that I want to say about the primary somatosensory cortex is to tell you about, or remind you, hopefully, about the fact that there is a somatotopic map on the primary somatosensory cortex. So somatotopic map. So what on earth does this mean? This is all about which portions of the primary somatosensory cortex are going to receive sensory information from which regions of the body. So look, this is a great big piece of cortex here. And we know that this is going to take sensory information from all over the right side of the body. The question is it all random? I.e., if we looked at this little piece of primary somatosensory cortex, would we find that sensory information from the leg, the facial region, the arm, all over the body is all being delivered to that region? No, is the answer. It's more organised than that. It's nicer than that. There is an organisation to it. Different regions of the body go to different portions of the primary somatosensory cortex, and this is what we call the somatotopic map. So, let me just draw a little stick man here. So I'll try and draw him a little bit big so that we can actually draw some useful information onto this. So here is my little stick man. We are, of course, interested in only the stickman's right-hand side because we are looking at the left primary somatosensory cortex. So let's put a little dashed line down the middle and divide them in two. So we're only interested in this side, which is the right-hand side. And my question is, all of the general sensory information from all over this portion of this right side of the body, where are the different portions going to go on my left primary somatosensory cortex? Well, the answer is, it's almost as though he's upside down. In fact, it's exactly as though he's upside down as far as the primary somatosensory cortex is concerned. The foot goes right at the top, the lower limb goes further down, the trunk goes further down still, and it continues. The arm goes further down still, and it's all looking very pretty at the moment. Let's see if I can maintain it looking pretty. And the head region goes further down still. Excellent. That is the basics of the somatotopic map for the primary somatosensory cortex. The bottom of the body goes right at the top, and then as you work your way around, down, you go to the higher portions of the body. So the head region is quite far down here. And of course that will just be the right side of the head region, whereas the left side of the head region will be on the right primary somatosensory cortex. So the mirror image of this picture is true for the right primary somatosensory cortex. Excellent. So we understand that there are these two portions of cortex, the right and left primary somatosensory cortexes, and that all sensory information is going to be relayed up to these cortexes. And really there isn't that much fancy processing that occurs in the relay pathways. There's a little bit of convergence, which we'll discuss the significance of later, but which we don't need to worry about at the moment. Really, these pathways are just relay pathways. They're going to relay the primary information up to the contralateral primary somatosensory cortex, and then, once it's reached there, it is going to be processed in ways that we do not understand to give rise to actual conscious sensation. So, what are we doing now? We are discussing the relay pathways for sensory information from the facial regions of the head, the two sides of the facial region of the head. How is this going to be relayed up to the primary somatosensory cortex on the contralateral side? And then later we'll discuss how it works for the rest of the body, where the sensory information is coming into the spinal cord. We'll discuss the spinothalamic tract and the dorsal column medial lemniscal pathway. But for now we're doing it for the trigeminal nerves, which have special pathways. Okay, so it's good now to go back to this picture here. So, here is my beautiful picture of the two trigeminal sensory nuclei. We have the left trigeminal sensory nucleus here, and we have the right trigeminal sensory nucleus here. We also have the two trigeminal nerves here, the left trigeminal nerve and the right trigeminal nerve. And first thing to say is that the left trigeminal sensory nucleus, if I haven't said this already, it's very important, the left trigeminal sensory nucleus serves the left trigeminal nerve, i.e. the left side of the facial region. The right trigeminal sensory nucleus serves the right trigeminal nerve, i.e. the right side of the facial region. So, general primary sensory afferents from the sides of the face, the right and left sides of the face, will come in through the respective trigeminal nerves. So right facial information comes in through the right trigeminal nerve, left facial information comes in through the left trigeminal nerve. All of the primary sensory afferents are pseudo-unipolar neurons, which will have their cell bodies in the trigeminal ganglia, and they're going to send their central processes into the central nervous system to synapse on second-order neurons and relay the information onwards. And I should just say, we are discussing the pathway by which we're going to relay information up to the primary somatosensory cortexes from the trigeminal nerves. It's going to involve three neurons. The first order neuron we know about, it has its cell body in the trigeminal ganglia. The second order neuron is going to have its cell body in the trigeminal sensory nucleus, we're about to discuss that. The third order neuron that the second order neuron is going to synapse onto is going to have its cell body in the contralateral ventroposteromedial thalamic nuclei. So the second order neurons are going to relay the information up to the thalami, and then from the thalami it will go up to the primary somatosensory cortex. So that's just so that you've got the big picture that we're now going to study in detail. Right, so let's just do this then. So let me get my red pen, I think. So we'll do this for the right hand side here. So here that I'm drawing on now, this is a central process of a primary sensory afferent that is a pseudo-unipolar neuron that has found, it's collected some sort of sensory information from the right facial region of the head. Its central process is now coming in through the right trigeminal nerve, and it's going to go into the right trigeminal sensory nucleus. Now, for simplicity, for pictorial simplicity, I have got it going into the principal sensory nucleus of the trigeminal nerve. It could have gone into any of these regions, however, and its synapse could be in any of the regions. This is a massive, great nucleus. All of the second-order neurons are in this nucleus. So it could have gone all the way down here in the spinal tract of the trigeminal nerve to then go down in some deep deep portion of the spinal nucleus of the trigeminal nerve. However, for simplicity, we are going into the principal trigeminal sensory nucleus there. Okay, and here it is now going to synapse and relay its information onto a second order neuron that I will do in this nice mint colour here. So here is the cell body of this second order neuron drawn nice and simply. Now, the second order neurons and indeed the third order neurons, they are no longer going to be pseudo-unipolar neurons. Instead, they are going to be multipolar neurons. Now remember what multipolar means. This is the classical neuron. These are the pictures of neurons that we drew when we were in school. These are the neurons where, to draw a simple picture of them, here is the cell body, here's the nucleus in the cell body. They then have a great big axon coming off them, and they then have loads of other processes coming off them, which are their dendrites. So here I'm also drawing on the dendrites of my multipolar neuron. The motor neurons are multipolar neurons. The second order neurons and the third order neurons, the tertiary neurons, are also going to be multipolar neurons. So, it's got lots of dendrites, and here will be where primary neuron central processes can come and synapse on the second order neuron. Now, for now, we can just imagine it very simply that lots of that each of the, well, no, I'll tell you the truth rather than simplifying it down. The truth is that there is going to be convergence at this point, i.e. that each second order neuron does not just receive a synapse from a single primary sensory neuron. Instead, lots of primary sensory neurons, all of the same modality from the same sort of region of the face, they will converge onto the same second order multipolar neuron here. But for simplicity, every single primary neuron here, and every single primary sensory neuron will synapse onto a second order neuron. It's not the case, however, that every second order neuron only has a single primary neuron synapsing onto it. But these dendrites are where the primary neurons are going to synapse onto the second order neuron. It will become significant later on that there is that convergence, so I'll come back to it later on. But for now, we can simply imagine it as though it's just a simple relay, although there is slight convergence there. And this will give rise to certain phenomena that we'll talk about later on. Right, so now, the primary neuron has synapsed onto the second order neuron here, and the second order neuron is now going to send its axon up to the contralateral ventropostromedial thalamic nucleus. This is important. Remember, sensory information from the right side of the face is going to go up to the left primary somatosensory cortex. So at some point we need a crossover, and the crossover is now. The second order neuron's axon is going to go into a contralateral structure. So how is it going to get up to the contralateral ventropostromedial thalamic nucleus? Well, it goes through something called the trigeminothalamic tract. So, oops, let me get the pen back. So it's going to go through something called the trigeminothalamic tract. And the trigeminothalamic tract is also called the trigeminal lemniscus. Now, I've run out of space to put that in there, so I'll just go up here and put trigeminal lemniscus. So it's going to go through the trigeminothalamic tract, also called the trigeminal lemniscus. Now, there is one of these on each side, so again we have to use this uncomfortable plural word that doesn't actually exist, lemnisci, but it's the best word for what I need to describe. So there are two trigeminal lemnisci, or I could just use trigeminothalamic tracts. So there are two trigeminothalamic tracts. That's probably a good way of avoiding that problem. And we can abbreviate trigeminothalamic tracts down to TTT. Right, so let me now show you that where the trigeminothalamic tracts actually are. They are white matter tracts. They are the axons of second order multipolar neurons that have their cell bodies in the trigeminal sensory nuclei that are ascending to the thalami. So let me try and put them in on this picture here. So here we go. So I'm putting in the left-hand side one first because it's the left-hand side one that we need for our picture, because our second order neuron that is in the right trigeminal sensory nucleus is going to go into the left trigeminothalamic tract, and that's going rather well. So what you can see from what I've drawn so far, and I will add them onto all of my cross sections in just a moment, what you can see from what I've drawn so far is that these things are very close to the centre. They're more medial compared to the trigeminal sensory nuclei. In fact, at many points on the brainstem, they're going to be more medial than the medial lemnisci. So here is the right one now that I'm putting in next to the left one here. And let's hope I don't now ruin this picture. It's going very well. And there we go. Okay, so this picture's getting a little bit crowded, but it's important to have those on there. So those are the trigeminothalamic tracts, the TTTs that we've got on there. Now, before I actually show the axon of my second-order multipolar neuron going into the contralateral trigeminothalamic tract then, let's make sure that we're completely comfortable with the anatomy here by showing you where they are at all the different levels. And I've just realised I've got loads of horrible lines that I've managed to put on my picture again. Let me just get rid of these. And dots. Bane of my life, these things. There we go. Right, okay, so we want to now put the trigeminothalamic tracts then in on our cross-section pictures that we've got here. So here is the cervical spinal cord that we've got a cross-section of here, and we want to show where are the trigeminothalamic tracts on my cross-section here. So they are in the anterior white matter columns, right at the back in these positions, and I'll put them right over the annotations that I've put on there. So these are the positions of the trigeminothalamic tracts at the cervical level, so I'll just label them up there. Those are the TTTs. And we discussed the fact that the trigeminal sensory nucleus, the spinal portion of it that's in the cervical level of the spinal cord, that's going to be present in the substantia gelatinosa portion of the dorsal horn grey matter. So if we have a neuron, a second-order neuron, and let's just put one in there in purple or pink here. So if we have a second-order neuron here, its axon will cross over into the contralateral trigeminothalamic tract like so. Okay, and equivalently for the left-hand side here, if we had a second-order neuron in the left trigeminal spinal nucleus here, its axon will cross over into the right trigeminothalamic tract and ascend up in the right trigeminothalamic tract. So that's where the trigeminothalamic tracts are throughout the spinal cord. They're right at the back of the anterior white matter column. Now we go up into the medulla region of the brainstem. Where are the trigeminothalamic tracts here? Well, they are behind the medial lemnisci in these two positions here. So we go up, and again, they're very, very medial, just behind the medial lemnisci here. So if we had a second-order neuron here in our trigeminal sensory nucleus on the right-hand side here, its axon would again cross over into the contralateral trigeminothalamic tract to ascend then up in the trigeminothalamic tract. Going up further into the pons, where are the trigeminothalamic tracts in the pons region? They remain very, very medial in these positions that I've shown here, medial to the medial lemnisci. Now, just to make sure you understand, remember the medial lemnisci, when we go up into the pons, they twist around. This bit, if you like, comes forward to make them horizontal like this. The trigeminothalamic tract does not move with them. You might imagine when this moves down like this that these things on the end might also come down here. They don't. They stay where they were, and therefore they end up medial to the medial lemniscus like this. So that's where the trigeminothalamic tracts are in the pons region, and if we have a second order neuron, let's say in our trigeminal sensory nucleus in the pons level, its axon will again cross the midline into the contralateral trigeminothalamic tract. And then going up finally into the midbrain level, let's see where the trigeminothalamic tracts are in the midbrain level. Well, hopefully you might be able to guess they're going to be still medial to the medial lemnisci in those positions there. And again, you can imagine how if you have a second order neuron that needs its axon to go into the contralateral trigeminothalamic tract, how it might sort of get over here. Okay, so that's where the trigeminothalamic tracts actually are in our sections of the brainstem. So if I now just draw on the axon of my second order neuron here it comes, it's going to cross over, go into the contralateral trigeminothalamic tract, and then it's going to go up and up and up into a contralateral thalamic nucleus called the ventroposteromedial thalamic nucleus that is in the thalamus. So the next thing we need to discuss is the thalami then, a reminder of the thalami. So remember, the thalami are not part of the brainstem. They're now part of the diencephalon, part of the forebrain. But they sit above the midbrain. So if I just draw a simple picture of the midbrain from above so that I can put the two thalami sitting on top of the midbrain. So here we go. So we'll break convention and now draw the cerebral peduncles at the top. So we'll put the front at the top and the back at the bottom. So here we go. Here are the superior colliculi. Here is the right cerebral peduncle, and then completing up the left cerebral peduncle. So there's the basic picture of the midbrain from above. I'm not going to put any of the fancy structures that we recognise from a cross-section of midbrain, because I just want to do this so that I can show the two thalami sitting on top. So the thalami are egg-shaped structures that sit on top of either side of the midbrain. So let me put them in here in purple. So here is the left thalamus, and then on the right-hand side, here is the right thalamus. So these structures, the plural is that they are the thalami, singular, obviously, thalamus. So we need the left thalamus for our story because we were following a second order neuron that was in the right trigeminal sensory nucleus and is now in the left trigeminothalamic tract. So it's going to come up to the left thalamic nucleus and then go up to the left primary somatosensory cortex. So what I'm now going to do is take the left thalamus, this one here, and I'm going to show you the different thalamic nuclei. I'm going to break it up and show you the different thalamic nuclei. So let's draw another picture of it here. So here it is, removed from the top of the midbrain. So the thalamus contains a huge number of separate thalamic nuclei that are all involved in conveying information to and from the primary not just the primary somatosensory cortex, the entire cerebral cortex. Most of them are not relevant for what we're discussing. I'm just going to show them so that you've got the background anatomy. We are interested in the ventroposteromedial thalamic nuclei, and later we'll be interested in the ventroposterolateral thalamic nuclei. So one of the big things that divides the thalamus up is the internal thalamic lamina, which has this sort of shape here, like so. So remember, this is medial side and this is the lateral side. So this is the shape of the internal thalamic lamina viewed from above, where this is the medial side. So it curves at the back towards the medial side here. So I'll just sort of colour this in pink here and then write down its name. So that structure, that is the internal thalamic lamina that we use as a structure to divide the thalamus up. So internal thalamic lamina. Okay, so now let's go over some of the names of the different nuclei. So one is very, very simple. This one right at the front, what do you imagine that is going to be called? That is the anterior thalamic nucleus. So I'll just put ant-M. So for anterior thalamic nucleus, and you can add the thalamic in the middle there. Next one. And let's do this one here that is medial to the internal thalamic lamina. That is known as the dorsomedial thalamic nucleus, often abbreviated down to DMN. Now, why is it called dorsomedial? Well, remember, when we're talking about the brain, the word dorsal doesn't mean what it means in the rest of the body. Dorsal in the rest of the body means the same thing as posterior. It means towards the back of the body. However, dorsal in the context of the brain means towards the top of the brain, whereas ventral means towards the bottom of the brain. So this is viewed as the back of the brain, and this is viewed as the front of the brain. So I've actually put this word on the wrong side, really. I didn't do that deliberately, I just was writing it down there. But dorsal is actually up here, and ventral is down at the bottom. So why is this called the dorsomedial nucleus? Well, medial is obvious, but dorsal, it's because it is towards the back of the thalamus. And to really understand this, you need to take a cross-section through the thalamus. So let's imagine cutting the thalamus down like that, so that we can have a look at the shape of the internal thalamic lamina better. So, if we take this cross-section, we'll see something that looks just like this, because we've cut through an egg. And the way the thalamic lamina works is it's in this sort of position, like so. So you see, it doesn't go directly down. If it just went directly down, it would obviously come down like this, and then this would be the dorsomedial nucleus, but it doesn't. It curves medially round like that. So just to orient you, this is the top, so I could say this is the dorsal side, this is the bottom, this is the ventral side, this is medial, and this is lateral. So you can see that it curves round medially, and this, therefore, is that dorsomedial nucleus that we've just been seeing. So you can see that it is towards the back of the thalamus, or towards the top of the thalamus, the dorsal side, and also medial, hence why it's called the dorsomedial nucleus. So remember, dorsal does not mean the back of the thalamus, it means the top of the thalamus, just as dorsal does not mean the back of the brain, really, it means the top of the brain, and ventral means the bottom. So I hope that justifies why that nucleus is called the dorsomedial nucleus. Next, a very important part is right at the back here, very famous part, in green. That's called the pulvinar of the thalamus. So here is the pulvinar. And now this bit, this lateral bit here, this is very complicated. This is split into loads of separate nuclei. So let's just go over some of these. So how shall I divide this up? We'll divide it up like this initially. So there are lots of separate nuclei here. How many? About? I think it's about 6 separate nuclei here. So let's go through these. So let's start with this one that I'm colouring in blue here. Think what you would imagine this is going to be called. And let me just mark this one on this cross-section as well. It doesn't go all the way down, it goes like this. So this one that we're seeing here, that I've coloured in blue, it looks like this in the cross-section that we've taken there. It doesn't go all the way down. Hence, what do you think it's going to be called? It's at the back, the top of the thalamus, so dorsal, and it's on the lateral side, so this is the dorsolateral thalamic nucleus. So there in blue, that's dorsolateral. Let's have another colour, let's have orange. And this one that is in that orange position there, this one is given a strange name that's difficult to justify. This is called the lateral posterior thalamic nucleus, or the LP thalamic nucleus, so lateral posterior. So we can understand lateral. Posterior, well, I suppose it's posterior of the anterior thalamic nucleus, but that's the name people give it anyway. The other ones have a more sort of nice theme to them. So this one over here, this is called the ventro-anterior thalamic nucleus. Oh, and by the way, let me just add on the lateral posterior thalamic nucleus onto this cross-section picture. So that's, again, doesn't go all the way down, it goes like that, in that same sort of style as the dorsolateral one. Whereas the ventro-anterior one now, if we were to take a cross-section up here, it would look exactly like this. But all of this space here would now be this ventro-anterior thalamic nucleus. So you can see why it's called the ventro, because it's towards the bottom of the thalamus. And it's anterior as well, so that's the ventro-anterior thalamic nucleus, VA. Let's get another colour, we'll have red now. This one behind, in evil red, that's called the ventrolateral thalamic nucleus. Again, that goes through our cross-section. It will take up all this space here. It's ventral and it's lateral, so it's called the ventrolateral thalamic nucleus. And then finally, at the back, this is called the ventroposterothalamic nucleus. However, the ventral posterior thalamic nucleus is divided up into 2 separate parts. So let's imagine now taking a cross-section through here. What would we see? Again, let me get my pink back. And so if we took a cross-section at this level, here we go. Again, we've got a circle. We'd see the internal thalamic lamina curving away like that in normal red. Here is the dorsomedial thalamic nucleus, and then all of this is now the ventral posterior thalamic nucleus, the one that we're very, very interested in. So let me get an important colour. We'll have aquamarine. So this is the ventroposterior thalamic nucleus, the VP nucleus, but this is divided into two separate portions. So we can only see this if we take a cross-section through it, which is why I have taken a cross-section through it. So we divide it up like so. This bit that is lateral is called the ventroposterolateral thalamic nucleus, and the bit that is medial is then called the ventroposteromedial thalamic nucleus. So this bit that I've coloured in, that's the ventroposteromedial thalamic nucleus, and this bit that's lateral is the ventroposterolateral thalamic nucleus. So when you look from above like this, the only bit that you'll see is the ventroposterolateral portion of the ventral posterior nucleus. You'd have to take a cross-section through to see the ventroposteromedial, or you'd have to look from underneath to see the ventroposteromedial thalamic nucleus. And just because, of course, these are the two nuclei that are actually important to us, these are the only two, I think, that we're actually going to have any use for at all in this video, the ventroposterolateral one and the ventroposteromedial one. At the moment, the ventroposteromedial one is the star. Later on, when we discuss the spinothalamic tract and the dorsal column medial lemniscal pathway, the ventroposterolateral thalamic nucleus will become the star. So because these are the stars, let me write down their full names. So ventropostero and then medial thalamic nucleus, and if you wanted to turn that into ventroposterolateral, you just obviously get rid of the medial and put in lateral there. So we will just abbreviate these from now on, though, to VPM and VPL. So it's the VPM one that's important to us at the moment as far as the trigeminal lemniscus or the trigeminal thalamic tract is concerned. So sat on top then of the midbrain, we know are the two thalami. This trigeminothalamic tract here on the left-hand side is going to go up to the left ventroposteromedial thalamic nucleus, which is in this position. The right trigeminothalamic tract will go up to the right ventroposteromedial thalamic nucleus. And there they will synapse onto the third-order neurons. So the second-order neurons will now synapse onto third-order neurons that have their cell bodies in those ventroposteromedial thalamic nuclei. Those third-order neurons will also be multipolar neurons, and those multipolar neurons will then send their axons into the internal capsule and then up into the corona radiator and overall up to the primary somatosensory cortex on the same side as them. So I might just actually try and put this in here. So deep then inside is the thalamus. So in aquamarine, here is the thalamus. We can't obviously see this because this is deep inside, but you can imagine here's the top of the ponds, then there will be the midbrain underneath, and then there will be the left thalamus here that we're seeing. There will be the ventroposteromedial thalamic nucleus in this sort of position, and here, let's say, is it's a cell body of a tertiary or third-order neuron in that ventroposteromedial thalamic nucleus. I'll just demarcate it so this can represent ventroposteromedial thalamic nucleus, and then it's going to send its axon up through lots of white matter, through a structure called the internal capsule that is a major communication of axons between the brainstem and diencephalon and the cerebral cortex, then up through the corona radiator to the primary somatosensory cortex. And of course, because this is communicating sensory information from the facial region, it's going to come into this sort of region of the primary somatosensory cortex down here, because the head is towards the bottom of the primary somatosensory cortex. Okay, so that concludes our discussion of the trigeminal nerve then, and the trigeminothalamic tract. We haven't got to the stage where we can yet understand the thing that we were initially trying to understand, which, if I go all the way back, remember the thing we were trying to understand is the trigeminocervical complex. We are close. The trigeminal sensory nuclei are one of the components of the trigeminal cervical complex. We need to discuss how sensory information from the back of the head and also from the neck regions is conveyed into the central nervous system, and how it's conveyed up to the primary somatosensory cortex before we can understand this trigeminal cervical complex. This is the structure that brings in all nociceptive information from the head and neck region. So it's obviously very important for us to understand that. Let me just summarise what we have seen about the trigeminothalamic tract in this video. So we have seen that we have two trigeminal nerves. We've seen the anatomy of the trigeminal nerves. We have a left trigeminal nerve and a right trigeminal nerve. And the left trigeminal nerve serves the left facial region, the right trigeminal nerve serves the right facial region. And they bring in all of the general sensory information. The primary neurons are pseudo-unipolar primary sensory afferents that have a peripheral process and a central process. The peripheral process has the sensory apparatus located on its end, and it will be off in some peripheral region of the face. The central process then goes into the ipsilateral trigeminal sensory nucleus, the same-sided trigeminal sensory nucleus. If we're talking about the right trigeminal nerve, as we have indeed been doing throughout this video, it will be coming into the right trigeminal sensory nucleus here, and then it will be synapsing onto a second-order neuron that is a multipolar neuron in that trigeminal sensory nucleus. And that second-order neuron is now going to relay the information on further. It's going to send its axon into the contralateral trigeminothalamic tract, which is a white matter tract. It consists of loads of axons going upwards from second-order neurons that are in the trigeminal sensory nucleus on the contralateral side to it. So second-order neurons that have their cell bodies anywhere in this right trigeminal sensory nucleus will send their axons into the left trigeminothalamic tract, and they will go up to the left ventroposteromedial thalamic nucleus. There they will synapse on a third-order neuron that is a multipolar neuron again, and that third-order neuron will then send its axon up to the left primary somatosensory cortex, the low down region, and then we will have delivered the sensory information from the right facial region to the left primary somatosensory cortex, and the exact same holds true for the left facial region and the right primary somatosensory cortex. So this overall now is the pathway by which sensory information, including nociceptive information, which is the one that we're obviously extremely keen on understanding, is conveyed up to the primary somatosensory cortex. However, all of what we discussed doesn't just apply to nociceptive information, it applies to all of the general sensory modalities. So what we have discussed goes beyond just talking about pain coming into the primary somatosensory cortex from the facial regions. So, we'll have a break here. In the next video, we will discuss how sensory information, again, of all the general sensory modalities from the back of the head and the neck region is going to come into the central nervous system and is going to be conveyed up to the primary somatosensory cortex. Here it is going to be a bit more complicated because there are two pathways here, the spinothalamic tract and the dorsal column medial lemnitical pathway, and different types of general sensory modalities are going to go up different pathways. So we will then collect together how nociceptive information from the facial region and nociceptive information from the back of the head and the neck region is going to get up to the primary somatosensory cortex, and that will paint us the picture of what the trigeminocervical complex is. So that's what we'll do in the next video.